Hello, hello. Satahay. Satihin, how's everybody? How's everyone doing? Sidee layahay? I'm gonna try something different today. Hello, hello. Alhamdulillah, Abdikafi. Great. I'm glad to hear that. Inaad fiican tihiin? Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's been a while. I think that's way so many. So people are tired and they're fasting. And, and it's a wonderful, wonderful Sunday. Maalin wanaagsan weeye. Marka, here we go. I hope everybody nu fiican yahay. I hope how's everybody with fasting? Sonka, sidee ka tihiin? Sidee son your quarantine is at Squadin? How's that going? Being in quarantine, how's your Ramadan been in a COVID-19 world? Well, let's hear it. Mm-hmm. All right. Hello, Mahat Morgan. Thank you. So, Abdi Kafi, you are bored, huh? I feel you. Wallahi, I feel you. It is boring to be indoors. Maxaa laga qaban karaa? We have to stay indoors. We have to be safe. Waa inaan, guriga joogno. So, what can we do? What can we do? I know. Okay. Hayek Marka, let's get started. This weekly, first things first. Okay. So one of the big news that happened this week was that, and I believe, it has a particular significance to Somalis, that Bollywood lost 2 of its top stars in 1 week. Somalis in general have a huge connection with Indian films. And I believe, to be honest, this needs its own segment to talk about our relationship with Indian films and how much Somalis love Indian films. So 2 of India's most beloved movie stars, Irfan Khan and Rishi Kapoor, died within a day of each other last week. And even though typically there would be like a huge funeral with so many people showing up to bid them goodbye, this couldn't happen in a COVID-19 world, right? So everyone is indoors and, people have to stay indoors, and these lads could not get the funeral that such top stars would usually get. So are you a fan of Bollywood? Do you watch Bollywood films? Inshallah, Abdikafi, inshallah, wansur elinaya. So, inshallah, wansur elinaya. After Corona, sur elinaya. So first, Corona inaan maxaa la yiraahdaa ka baxno waayo. So, Corona first inaan ka baxno waayo. And then we will talk about that. Hey, so what's your favorite Indian movie? Do you watch Indian movies? Which one is your favorite? What is your first Indian movie? Ani waxa igu qosol badneed when I would watch Indian movies and they would have the Somali voiceover. and it was usually just a few Somali voiceover actors, and you would hear the characters with the same voice. And I would be so confused. I'm like, why do they sound like this? Why do they have the same voice? So it was like always super hilarious to me. Thank you, Rhoda. How are you, love? How are you? Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. All right. Next on our list is that Kenya is spent 1 billion World Bank grant in 30 days, with some of the expenditure being tea and mandazi that costs 4 million Kenyan shillings. So this kind of talks about the kind of corruption that happens in, a lot of countries. That how do you spend that much money? And how do you spend it on such things such as, I mean, it's supposed to be for the emergency response, including getting the personal protective equipment, medicine, and setting up isolation facilities for people. And instead, it was spent on tea, airtime. So Safaricom probably got a lot of the money. And they did, I guess, do one good thing with it, ambulance hire. But how do you spend $1 billion in 30 days? Does that just like reek of like being super suspicious? I thought that was kind of like a eyebrow raise thing. I was like, oh my gosh, how do they spend that much money in that short amount of time? And then when it comes out what they spend the money on, it was surprising and not surprising, because we know the kind of corruptions that happen. And without, the kind of paperwork and trails and checks and balances, a lot of things can happen. A lot of corruption can occur. So that was like quite unbelievable to me. I thought that was, Adan kuna hirse. Inshallah, I will. We are going to do one, inshallah, in Somali language. So you're not too much complaining. I understand qof kastaba wuxuu rabaa inuu news mise barnaamij uu ku helo luqadiisa. Marka anigana waan kugu raacsanahay. It's just that this program particularly is for set in English language with a little bit of some English. So no dulqaado. Marka inshallah soon we'll have some more programs that are going to be in. Oh, yes. Abdi, was it? Abdi Kafi, you are right. 1 billion Kenyan shillings. I stand corrected because I thought to myself too, $1 billion, that's huge. No, it's 1 billion Kenyan shillings. So they spend 1 billion Kenyan shillings in 30 days. And what was extra suspicious was the fact, the kind of things that it was spent on. All right. So in a world that we're living in right now with the coronavirus, and living in America personally, we have, I don't really have a lot of nice words to say, so I just keep them to myself. But President Trump made some allegations that the coronavirus was man-made or genetically modified in a Wuhan virology laboratory. And the Office of the U.S. National Intelligence has actually confirmed that it was in fact not man-made and not genetically modified. And it just kind of speaks to the kind of fake news that's going around and how dangerous they are, right? How dangerous the fake news is. But not only that, obviously it's dangerous because it's lacks the critical thinking that we would like to have in our society. And you wouldn't expect that from a president or anybody holding a particularly high office. And it just lacks, intelligence, and it lacks, it basically insults the intelligence of the people listening to him. So that was just very baffling to me. And speaking of that, also, people are protesting. That that they should be allowed to go outside. And I think that has been kind of, a rough thing. Being indoors has been very difficult. But the fact of the matter is, being outside risks the coronavirus. And the fact that people have been protesting and saying things like, give me freedom or give me death, or give me liberty or give me death, and give me government distancing. So take the government out of my personal life, as though the government has no responsibility towards its people to protect it. Yeah. So Mahad says, imagine, so if we go back a little bit to the looting. I don't know if it's looting, to be honest, but it's just very highly suspicious, right? Imagine if they spent that large amount in 1 month. What do you think they will spend next? The looting spree is excess in Kenya, yet in Mombasa, people are cooking stones due to hunger. So when you see the disparity between people who have and people who don't have, it's just very heartbreaking. It's always like, some people have like really excess, and then you read about some people having to cook stones because, they're hungry, right? So it's just a really terrible thing. Another thing with the coronavirus is that there was a report of an outbreak of the coronavirus in France that had very little to do with cases imported from China or Italy. So the virologists at a Pasteur Institute have sequenced the genomes from samples taken from 97 French people and 3 Algerian coronavirus between January 24th and March 24th. So the COVID-19 was already silently circulating in France before virus arrived from China and Italy. And this particular virus seems to be a different strain. So that made me think about the strain in... Hi, Hassan. That made me think about the low cases in Africa. So do you think that maybe the low cases in Africa could be there could be like different virus strains circulating around? It hasn't gotten there yet. What do you guys think about the lack of low cases? Could it be because of the lack of testing? What could be like the major reason that we have such low cases in Africa? Okay, so let me quickly check the comments here. Okay. See more. Okay. Hi, Hassan. How are you? Okay. Abdul Wadud said he doesn't understand the topic about Kenya. So Kenya basically received a lot of money from the World Bank. So they spent about 1 billion Kenya shillings that they received from the World Bank to fight coronavirus in Kenya. And the money was all spent in 30 days. And it was spent on such things such as airtime, tea, shai, and one good thing here, it says that they did spend it on ambulance hire, but was it personal ambulance hire or was it generally for the people? So it was 4 million shillings for tea, 42 million for leasing ambulances. Okay, so that's good. And they also spend it on snacks, and shillings 2 million for airtime. So basically we're talking about funds being misappropriated and being used differently for what it was intended for. Okay, so people are saying that the low case in Africa is caused by the warm weather, and that's something that it doesn't really have a lot of like scientific research behind it or evidence for it. So there isn't really a general consensus saying yes, warm weather eradicates virus, right? So is there a specific temperature that that a virus cannot survive in? Hassan says it's a different strain, and also because Kenyans in particular have had chloroquine treatment for malaria since we were kids. Testing also, and the low intra-Africa trade and infrastructure connections. Yeah, that's actually a really good thing that you've mentioned the chloroquine treatment for malaria since we were kids. I do remember getting malaria a lot when I was living in Garissa and getting treated for it with those really painful shots. Do you guys remember those shots in your buttocks? Yeah, that was painful. I remember those dark days. Yes, Rhoda, this virus is new and more data needs to be collected in order for many questions to be answered. So there are so many questions that do need to be answered. And the fact that there was a whole nother strain in France just silently circulated without the world, I guess, knowing is very, one, troublesome, and two, speaks to, are there any other strains? And where could they be circulating right now? So there's so many things that are unanswered about the coronavirus that, it's rough. Absolutely. Yes, Hassan, those were those were definitely painful days. Yes, absolutely. It was very, very painful days. Okay, so the next hot topic, right? And it's just super interesting because this set the entire internet or the entire Twitter, I would say, aflame. So it set the Twitter aflame because people were talking about this and saying, this is utter madness. So I will go ahead and show you the tweet that had people screaming this week. I hope y'all can see it. So we had a young lady. I love it. We had a young lady. It is high time we allow men to cheat. Make it halal by allowing him to marry. Men are naturally polygamous. In my opinion, the wife should support her husband, and maybe if the wife is extra, she can help her husband raise the wedding expenses. Do you agree? Now, this tweet had the Twitter sphere aflame, and there were a lot of comments left and right. As you can imagine, the men were supportive of that. And as you can also imagine, the women weren't very pleased with that, especially that coming from a woman. So what is your opinion on this tweet? Let's talk. No one has anything to say about that one? I thought, oh, thank goodness. Abdikafi said, I agree her opinion 100%. Okay, so you agree, Abdikafi, but why? Why do you agree? Like, what is the reason that you agree? Hassan, it is confusing. So she said we should allow men to cheat, but at the same time, she's saying make it halal by allowing them to marry. And, I read this and I, felt some type of way about it. I thought to myself, that's just great. A woman doing the patriarchy's bidding. That's just wonderful. That's my opinion, right? But for me personally, there's just a lot of things that go into play. And I personally don't think polygamy is something that is realistic in this day and age. And it really doesn't take into consideration the original purposes for it. And it doesn't take into consideration the world that we live in today and the kind of, things that a household or family needs, as well as the emotional investment that people make in a marriage and the kind of life outlook and vision, that they have for their life. So unless this is something that people have agreed on ahead of time, I just can't imagine, this being okay, right? So unless people have agreed upon it ahead of time, I can't imagine this like being an okay thing to do. So what do you guys think? Like, if people like agree on it ahead of time, I actually had a friend not too long ago. He had told me that when he got married, he said, I told my wife, before we got married, my father has a lot of wives, and, I am planning on remarrying after you. And, that is just something that I want to let you know. And I thought that was real, and a person can either accept that or not accept that, right? A person has a choice in that matter. But what I see a lot of times, like in Somali culture, is that women are just surprised. Like all of a sudden your husband is just married somewhere and it's like you're blindsided and that hurts, Can we talk about that actually hurts and it damages the marriage? So actually marka waxa waaye like muxuu ka faa'iiday marka haduu naag kala guursaday, his previous family sidaasuu ku burburay. And I'm thinking to myself, what exactly was the benefit here? What did you gain? You go from having hopefully a happy home, a reasonable, long-term marriage with a family and children, what have you. And all of a sudden you have a whole separate household, I see a lot of women that are a lot of times even expected to be a basically married single mother. You have all these kids and you're just expected to raise them physically, mentally, and emotionally yourself. Even if the man is providing financially, the workload is still for one person a lot. That should you go to a job, you leave the job, you know what I mean? You come back home, but like parenthood is not a job that you can leave or that you can quit. It's 24/7, all day, every day. So, thank you, Abdulwali. So it's okay. Hassan Ugas, and okay. Rhoda says polygamy is a choice and not compulsory under Sharia law. So yeah, if it's a choice, and if it's like not something that people have to do, why is always the argument against it? Like, no, the argument for it, why is it always, but it's allowed? What about other things that make it unreasonable, impractical for somebody's life? So what about those things? Because a lot of times the only argument that I always ever see for it is it's allowed. That's it. Like no consideration at all for the women's choice, no consideration for somebody's vision for their life, for their vision for their families, no consideration for the person's like emotional needs, none of that. It's allowed, end of story. And I just always think to myself, like, that's not reasonable. You can't just completely disregard the other person and just say, I'm just going to do whatever I'm going to do. Then you no longer really are invested in that relationship. You're no longer invested in that marriage. And then, as Rola here says, women have a choice to walk away. And they shouldn't be guilted into staying because it's allowed. There's still that relationship between two people that still needs love and nurturing and growth, right? So this is absolutely, yes, some guy said, there aren't a lot of, there's a huge topic, and we need to have, a bigger audience for it, and we can probably bring it back some other time. We can definitely bring it back. All right, that was that. Next huge news this week, and I was very pleased with that, was that Sudan outlawed FGM, and I thought that's just how I just thought that's just really amazing that it's like legally on the books that FGM is not allowed, and that is that, you know? So, and I think that's just a wonderful thing. However, I'm also thinking about how sometimes cultures and traditions are so deeply embedded in a society that it's just really hard to like completely get rid of it. People will still practice it on the low. So I still think that there's so much work still to be done. You know, there's still so much work that needs to be done, because you don't just change people's hearts and minds like overnight. It doesn't just like happen, you know. People really have to be convinced, and then a habit or behavioral change has to take, you know, as a society, takes time, unfortunately, right? So my concern is that instead of, you know, I'm glad that it's outlawed. I'm very happy that it's outlawed. My concern is that it'll still happen on the low. And will actual prosecutions happen for such a thing, right? Because in like any society, you have, you know, the de facto law, de facto culture, and you have like the de jure, like the law, right? So could it just still continue? And could there not be any prosecutions because it's just the culture of the place? And if there aren't any prosecutions, then the law will not be taken as serious. Yes, Mohammed, I do believe Somalia and other Muslim countries should follow Sudan in FGM, and they should completely outlaw it. I mean, it's just terrible, and it's just not something that, you know, that should happen at all. It's barbaric. Fanah Adam said, cheating is totally prohibited for all mankind. There's no need to be asked. Well, people talk about things, right? And society, you know, changes and, you know, either moves forward or moves backwards. We like to think that progress is moving forward, you know, but sometimes we don't, right? Sometimes we do lose essential things for us as a society in the name of progress. And that's completely another topic, you know, for another time, obviously. So the next thing that I have here is let me see. Okay, so Somali Minister downplays Corona death toll. And I would like to share with you this video right now. Let's see. Let us see. Hold your horses. All right. Let me find the video. All right, here it is. Let's see if we can see it. I hope you guys can see it. Let me know if you can see it. It's kind of low. I don't know if you guys can hear it.
aad iyo aad baad u mahadsan tahay su'aal runtii aad muhiim u ah marmarka qaarkood annagu analysis kaan samaynay waxaad moodaa dadku inay waxoogaa coronavirus phobia ka qaaday sidii AIDS-kii oo kale coronavirus AIDS oo kale ma kulama noolaanayo waa waqti kooban oo toddobaad ama laba toddobaad aad naftaada badbaadin kartaa qoyskaaga badbaadin kartaa bulshadana badbaadin kartaa sidaa uu sheegay qof walba wuxuu dhahayaa malaria ay haysaa malaria u dhintay cagaarshowgu u dhintay waxa kaba jiraan dawladda Soomaaliya qof kasta oo dhinta maanta waxay aqoonsatay coronavirus inuu jiro maadaama majority ogaada qof kasta oo dhinta waxaan u aqoonsanahay coronavirus inuu jiro markii uu naga baxo halkii caadiga ahayd lagu noqdo ama uu sahlay inuu dhinto coronavirus marka waxba beeyaa la isu sheegi qannada oo dhan waa coronavirus waxba malaria maybe way la jiri kartaa malaria dadka waxaan leenahay qofka qandhaysan ha laga dheeraado cusbitaalada ha la geeyo sababtuu u qandhaysan yahay ha la baaro adigoo aan maaskis kuu xidhnayn ha ku dhowaanin hadduu dhinto dhaqidiisa iyo duugistiisu process dowladeed waaye adigu ha maydhin adigu ha duugin
Okay, so let's see. Let's try something different to see we can watch that video together, and I hope that everybody was able to see it. But he's saying basically that the government say that everything is presumed to be coronavirus, right? And the idea, I really don't know what he's actually like trying to say. Like, is he's trying to say that it's not a problem? Is he trying to say that the government is like scaring the people excessively? And then you have people, and then he's talking about all the things to do. And then he's also saying, assume that any qanda is coronavirus. So it's kind of like, I feel like he's talking in circles, right? So it seems to me like he's talking in circles. And is this like, the government is lying about coronavirus, it's making a big deal out of it, right? And we just assume that everything is coronavirus. And then he says, we should assume that every fever is coronavirus. And then he goes on to all the things that people should do to prevent coronavirus, which is like, I guess, all good. But the entire argument just seemed, I don't know, he just seemed to me to be talking in circles. Mohammed Def says that's what happens when you have uneducated people to lead. Leaders are elected by citizens, not by Qabil. The whole world knows how dangerous corona is. Where are the media getting their status and daily updates? That's a really great question, right? Definitely something to look into. Abdikafi says the number of deaths in Somalia is increasing, and the percentage of 100 cases of corona is 10 deaths, unfortunately. So that's 10%, right? And the percentage worldwide, or like the general, like the average was like 3-point-something%. So that is like nearly 3 times the world average. If those numbers are correct, that's nearly 3 times, right? Abdul Dahir kind of went back a little bit. With Misty's tweet, there may be some context, perhaps is related to another tweet from a week earlier we missed. I guess we'll do some research and see. This is the tweet that had everybody talking. Setting law and regulation usually takes time, says Mohammed Deq. It takes time for people to respect it. People might still continue to do FGM illegally, and it will take the new generation for Sudan to be FGM free. I absolutely agree with that. It really does take time, right? So it's just about the Sudan situation. It really does take time, and I really do hope that the new generation come with like new attitude, come with like new philosophies or new ideas about it, so that they don't find it acceptable. So, and that's the only way that change is going to happen. Not so much, the law obviously does influence people's behavior, but intrinsic motivation obviously is more important. And when people really believe in something, they're more likely to act upon it. And then when it becomes a social norm, even the ones that aren't really convinced also may be convinced because, social conformity and peer pressure is a real thing, so for what it's worth. All right, let's see some comments here. Okay, So like finally, a really big deal that happened here on North America's side is that Canada bans assault weapons. And as an American, I obviously think this is a big deal, right? Because we have we have a lot of major gun enthusiasts, in the country that I live in, and Trudeau announces ban on 1,500 kinds of assault weapons that I believe, to be honest, a regular citizen should not have access to, right? You shouldn't have access to assault weapons. Some of these protests that we've been seeing across the country in the United States this past week or so have been these men with like these huge assault weapons. I'm like, what are you going to do with that? And why are you allowed to have that, So I'm really glad, there was this talk here. The call to ban assault weapons was heightened after a number of high-profile shootings. So in 2007, a mosque in Quebec was shot. In 2018, a commercial street in Toronto. And then most recently was the Nova Scotia. I'm not saying that probably correctly, but whatever, Nova Scotia, that became the deadliest shooting in Canada's history. So Canada is like learning from its from the things that happen. And we on the American side have had so many school shootings, so many shootings, and nothing gets done. And the First Amendment keeps like being upheld like it's like sacred divine law. When it was set up, the First Amendment, not the First Amendment, Second Amendment, it was when maybe the common citizen could take arms against the state. But as the US military spends huge amount of money in its military spendage, the average citizen obviously does not, military-wise, no matter how many assault weapons it has, stand a chance against the US military. So the Second Amendment basically is moot. It has no purpose. It's just for some people to flaunt their assault weapons because, I don't know, for overcompensation. I don't know what you need an assault weapon for. You don't need it. No, I don't care what you say. You don't need an assault weapon. So it's just a way for people to just, I guess, overcompensate for something or feel better about something. Whatever it is. Either way, this past March was the first time in, I was reading, 18 years that we haven't had a school shooting. And that was because school was not in session. What does that say? And we had a major school shooting in Sandy Hook not too long ago. And that should have been like our never again moment. But we don't learn. So for me, as a American citizen, to see Canada take action like that, it makes me really happy, and also frustrates me that our leaders don't take our lives as serious. Mohammed F says it shows Canada has better leaders and they are more united than USA. Okay. And Abdul Dahir says he has a lot to say, but he has surgery on his right hand today and the left one types too slow. Oh, wow. I feel you, bro. I'm sorry. I hope you recover soon. I hope you recover soon. Absolutely. All right. So I am hitting that 38-minute mark. And you guys know I don't like to stay too long, right? So those of you who've been here, Abdikafi, shout out to Abdikafi Tarafiko. Thank you very much for being here. You're a real one. Appreciate you. Oh, hi, Dontavius. What's happening? Congratulations, by the way. Congratulations. Okay, what else? Who else? Rada Hussein. Thank you very much. Abdul, thank you. All right. So, those are the topics that I had for today, right? So just a quick run through again. Let's start from the top. So very, very sad moment. So death of two huge Bollywood actors, and Somali's particular relationship with Bollywood as a film industry. the kind of corruption that happens in using or misappropriating government funds for other usages, the origin theory of the virus, and the fact that we had a different strain of the virus circulating in France. So social commentary on Twitter feed, where a young lady said it's high time we allow men to cheat. That caused a ruckus online. Sudan did a wonderful, great thing and outlawed FGM. And, I really hope that the people really take it serious, and that all other countries, especially in that region, also my own country, Somalia, takes that serious. Somali Minister downplays corona death toll and just kind of talks in circles about the government's maybe making a big deal out of this, and, you should do X, Y, Z to prevent coronavirus. And finally, Canada bans assault weapons. And Canada bans assault weapons, which is really, really great. And I think, it's something that obviously needs to be done. It needs to happen. Abdul, I don't know. I like an hour long. That seems like, reasonable. I also like not to overstay my welcome. I'm like, is an hour long reasonable? Can I talk for a whole hour long? GM Ismail, hi, walala, waqsalame. Ramadan Kareem, same to you. Shukri Ado, who died? So Irfan Khan and Rishi Kapoor. So it was Irfan Khan and Rishi Kapoor. And I thought this is just worthy of mentioning, as we, as Somalis, watch a lot of Hindi films, and it's a big part of our culture, And I want to dig deep into that. I want to research that a little bit further and figure out how we have come to love Hindi films like that. And, as I love arts, right? As an artist, I'm very interested always, as I guess at my older ages, I'm also becoming a history buff. I just love researching things and learning the origins of it. And how did we come to love this so much? And how did we, as a society, as Somalis, we have the Ruwayada and the Gabay and those other folklore things. And then as modernization took root, Bollywood started to establish itself as a film industry. And then, Somalis really love to watch Hindi films. So that is that's probably going to have to be a segment in its own. Abdul does long stories. He just, likes to drag things on, right? But anyways, any last remaining comments, concerns, questions? Let a girl know before I sign off. Yeah. All right. Let's see. We covered a lot of topics, right? And if you want to hear more about it, shoot me a message. My inbox is open. If you have questions, concerns, comments about the program, and if you would like to, if you would like us to add something else or elaborate on a particular topic or create a specific segment for a particular topic, or even if you would like to request that I do a particular segment in Somali only. Ila sartsi. Hayuay. Marka, I bid you adieu. Au revoir. Kwaheri. Masalam. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Hassan, for your comments. I really appreciate it. Yes. I will. Let me write down the email real quickly so that people can take a note of the email address. So holla at your girl there. And if you have any comments, concerns, topics that you would like me to hit on, I I look forward to hearing from you. Hi, Masalam.